Congresswoman Lee, I want to pick up on something that Congresswoman Barragan mentioned before about how Democrats need to listen and meet people where they are. One of my concerns in seeing the results of the election as a result of the campaign that was run, a campaign that was openly white nationalist, openly racist, misogynistic, xenophobic, transphobic. There was a lot of hate in this campaign. And so I'm just wondering, how do we get over that hump? And I think you mentioned this, you sort of alluded to this in your first answer in the last block about we're just sort of tinkering around the edges in this discussion. How do we move forward when we've had an incoming president who ran the way he did?
Well, I agree with Congresswoman Barragan and what she said. We have to talk to voters and really understand what was it that allowed them, in a democracy, of course, we vote for who we want to vote for based on the reasons we believe one candidate is preferred over another. What we need to do as Democrats is listen to people and understand what is on their mind and what is affecting their lives. But when you have a vice president who's prepared, who's ready, who has the experience, a woman of color, to be our president, who received 68 million votes, then we have to really take stock of what was it that allowed people to vote for Donald Trump. That's their choice. But in fact, we have to know the reasons why. And I'm not sure we really know yet. And that's about listening and going around the country trying to understand that.
Well, Congresswoman, I get the listening, but as you well know, there are black women posting online that they're fed up with saving democracy. I'm just wondering your response. And actually, let me put up this. I think it's something that was either on X or on Threads. This is from Ebony J. Hilton, MD. Do we have that? Yes, here it is. It's so funny that so many black women collectively came with the same message immediately after the results. Listen closely. We are done. We're now taking care of ourselves for the next 4 years. Read that again to make sure you understand. 4 complete years. Y'all be good out there. What's your response to that?
Listen, I feel the anger, the pain also. Believe you me. The 5 stages of grief have gotten to many of us. The trauma has settled in. But for me personally, I'm on this battlefield, and I'm going to stay on it because too much is at stake. Our children, our grandchildren. And I think black women really are feeling this because we have tried and tried and tried over and over and over again, and still you see what took place. So I ain't no way tired, as we say, and we're going to keep at it. But I understand when people want to, especially black women, look inward, try to figure out what next and how to do this next, because this was not right. And we have to understand what took place that allowed this vice president, a woman of color, to be defeated in a campaign that was 3 months long that, other voters decided they wanted a Donald Trump.
Congressman Pocan, one of the results of election night is, and I want to put this headline up from the Washington Post, LGBTQ plus crisis hotlines report spike in calls after Trump victory. And, as a member of the community, sadly, I am not surprised, especially after a campaign that put gay people, but specifically trans people, in the crosshairs of a political campaign.
No question. I've had so many people say they're afraid their marriage could be revoked. Stigmatizing trans kids certainly was popular during the campaign, but you didn't see it on the chart what moved voters. This is just part of the meanness of the Republican Party. Look, we're going to defend everyone, including the LGBTQI plus community, moving forward, because that's what we have to do. We have to be the party of FDR and defend the middle class and defend people as strong as we can, because in 2025, a tax bill will come up in Congress. And we know what Donald Trump did last time. 83% of the money went to the top 1%. He's going to do that again. There's a reason Elon Musk was jumping for joy during the campaign. But we're going to protect everyone. We're not going to let them go after any individuals. We're going to stay organized and together. And I know that we're going to have to just move to the step where we're organizing people in our communities to make sure that they cannot get away with any extreme agenda. Certainly, since it didn't move voters, we can't let them get away with this helping their extremists in their party.
Well, speaking of extremism, Congresswoman Barragan, one of my big concerns is the #1 promise that Donald Trump made on the campaign trail and still making noises about following through on it, and that is mass deportations. Listen to what Vivek Ramaswamy said today on ABC.
Look, I say this as the kid of legal immigrants to this country, as the proud child of legal immigrants to the United States of America. If your first act of entering this country broke the law, that doesn't allow you to remain in this country. You have no right to enter the United States.
And Congresswoman, listening to that, we have to also keep in mind that Donald Trump has not ruled out deporting Dreamers. How concerned should we be as a nation that he's going to carry that out and the awful impact that is going to have on communities across the country?
Well, we should definitely believe it when he says it. We saw him do it in the first term. I've been through one Trump presidency before and was at the forefront when I served on Homeland Security, being accountable to his his secretary at the time, Nielsen, who was separating children and their parents. We can expect that to happen again, even more so now. He feels more empowered. So one of the things that we're doing in the Congressional Hispanic Caucus is meeting next week with folks to make sure to talk about how the deportation plan may look like, what we can do. But it's going to really take this unity of all of us to work together to combat any of the extreme agenda that he has, including mass deportations. So we're looking forward to having all the caucuses stand together, which is why I'm glad my colleagues are on with us today, because it's going to take not just the Tri-Caucus and the Quiet Caucus, but everybody in the Democratic Caucus to hold this president accountable, to hold anything that he does accountable. But there is a lot of fear and concern right now in Latino communities. And let me just say, Latino communities are not a monolithic group, right? If you take a look at the data on which Latino groups, Mexican Americans in Los Angeles are different than Mexican Americans in South Texas, maybe along the southern border. So there is that, however, fear amongst the entire community about whether they're going to be the subject of raids, deportation, family separation, and that is all very real. So we're going to try to get ahead of it to see how we can make sure we're unified to combat this. And we also saw, by the way, the private detention groups, their stocks plummeted right after this election. Why? Because these are the folks Donald Trump is going to rely upon to also, put people in cages, detain people. And let me tell you one other thing, Jonathan, I saw. During the first Trump presidency, I went to the southern border and I saw an American citizen child being held there with a U.S. passport. I had to go to the official and say, what are we doing? We can't hold American citizens. This is not what this country is. I expect we're going to see more of that, and people are concerned. We're going to do all we can to protect them.
And get back in.
This is a great group. I am very thankful that you came on the Sunday show. We're going to have to do this again. Congresswoman Nanette Barragan, Congresswoman Barbara Lee, Congressman Mark Pocan, thank you all very much for coming to the Sunday show.